Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a therapist, but somebody on this show has to be here to be the whipping boy who is wrong occasionally, and I guess this is my week to be wrong.
Y'all, I never hear those words.
You tell me I'm wrong all the time.
Yeah, but I never hear you say them.
I admit when I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong. The fact that it doesn't happen that often is not my fault.
Well, I would like to promote that I am right, and I have been right calling this for weeks. So I will do my victory lap, and I'm very excited. But what a season for you to come in on. Seriously, you're welcome.
I've been hearing that this is a great season. Before we get into the whole events of the season, the episode, there's a couple things I do want to point out, okay? I do think that there's a real relevant piece here that I was really right on and felt very vindicated about. Robot Joey was in full force in that After the Rose.
Okay.
Was that After the Final Rose?
After the final, AFR.
I mean, you cannot deny at this point that he wasn't unbelievably stiff, robotic, defensive, guarded. Maybe defensive is the wrong word, but guarded.
Guarded. I was having a reaction to watching him when we were watching, which we'll get into when we get to the AFR portion.
Yeah. So I will take that little minor victory. And I still maintain, I have to say, I think Kelsey is a very lovely young lady. I think that ultimately I watched this entire episode and I was shocked that it wasn't Daisy at the end, just because she felt so young and unready to me, but their connection is undeniable. And that does matter. I do think Daisy's going to go on to do some great things and get some great publicity and have some great opportunities. But my one other major comment is that I was a little disappointed in Daisy. Her final segment, pieces of it, felt a little extra performative. It was one of those situations where, like, you've nailed it perfectly, you've got the mic drop moment, and then you just can't help yourself, and you just do that one or two little comments at the end, and it's like, oh, you just went too far. And that's how I felt about Daisy tonight. It just was a little bit too far, and came across as a little too performative and a little too, maybe a little rehearsed.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but we're getting very far ahead of ourselves. Before we go through and deconstruct the episode and all of the unprecedented things that happened in this episode, I want to remind you all to please hit that like button at the bottom of this video and hit subscribe if you haven't already. We didn't make it to our goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season, but guess what? We're still going to shoot for it. So again, if you are not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. If you are a subscriber, thank you. Maybe share our channel with a friend and help us get to that 1,000 subscriber goal.
Yeah, and please also hit that bell icon so that you're alerted anytime we post new content to the channel. And I will point out that we did double our subscriber base over this course of this season. So, we didn't hit our goal, but those of you who subscribed, we appreciate you. We added a lot of new subscribers to the channel, and it was a lofty goal, and I'm pretty happy with the growth.
Yeah, and I love our YouTube audience. I love how active you all are in the comments, and that also made it extra fun for us. So we hope you stick around with us for whatever we do next after we cover this finale episode of The Bachelor.
And apparently, we're going to have a Bachelorette here in the near future. Can we just start with that aspect of things?
The Bachelorette?
The new Bachelorette?
Sure.
All right.
Let's just be chaotic. Why not?
We're going.
It was a chaotic
episode. We're ending. I just want to point out, everybody, you guys know the drill. It is now 11:15 at night. You already know we're jumping on a plane tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Car's picking us up at 3:30 a.m. in like 3 hours. You guys know the drill at this point. So it's just going to be chaos from here on out through the
contained chaos. Hopefully.
Contained chaos. So we get our new Bachelorette. It is going to be Jen. We had just got done talking about this. I adore Jen. I think she is cute as a button. So fun. She was in my top 4 the entire way. I'm a huge fan. I didn't think that she would be a strong Bachelorette.
We just talked about this last week.
We just talked about it last week. And then she comes out and she's announced, which I thought was shocking. But hey, you know what? Like, I adore Jen, so I'm excited. And I thought, I don't know how these announcements typically go, but I was watching it and I thought it was a complete and utter bomb. What is yours?
I totally agree. You know, when we were talking about her Bachelorette interview last week when she was in the hot seat, I think we both had kind of said there wasn't a whole lot there. Like, it kind of seemed pretty surface level, performative at that point. And I like Jen. I've liked her the whole season. I think she's also just adorable. I like her energy. But
she's fun.
She's fun.
So much fun.
Well, that's the vibe,
I just wanna
clearly.
hang out with her,
I mean, that's what she's going for.
Yeah.
She's the fun Bachelorette.
Yeah.
And so I think that is, again, that's the vibe. It did feel a little young, and it felt like there was no depth there. And it just felt like after getting the king of all bachelors and Joey, who was just perfection the whole way through, and such a depthy season, to then have it be followed up by Shot O'Clock just felt a little like, like I'm gonna watch it, of course, and I'm rooting for Jen and all of that. Like, no Jen hate here, all Jen love, but just a little like, damn, like I wish that we got a little bit more meat on the bones or something. Maybe this show's coming out in the summer. Maybe it's like fun summer. I don't know. I would love to hear all your thoughts about Jen's announcement of Bachelorette and kind of what you're looking forward to, what maybe you're not looking forward to based on what we've seen so far from Jen. I'd love to hear where you're at.
Yeah. Bottom line, we both adore Jen. We're really rooting for her. We just have concerns of her ability to carry a season.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at, right?
No.
Okay, I got one other thing before we really get into some of the meat of the episode for you. You were about 3 minutes late from the episode because you were just getting off of a business meeting. And so you missed the fact that Joey was on the beach with his shirt off. And I want to point out, he's in Tulum. My comment to him right now after this episode is the same comment that Gabriella said about me the last time you and I were in Mexico. Do you remember what that comment is?
I sure do.
What was that comment?
It looks like Chris has been eating a lot of tacos.
His abs were gone. I mean, there was no definition. He looked like I look right now. I don't know what he did. Oh no, go back and watch.
Joey looks amazing. Let's not body shame.
I'm just saying the Mexican carbs. Mexican food has some of the best carbs out there. And I think he's partaking this past week heavily.
Joey looks amazing.
He still looks better than me.
Please don't say that about my, fantasy boyfriend.
That's fine, because if you divorce me between now and June, I'm applying to be on Jen's season of The Bachelorette.
You might be a little too old for that. I'm too old for Joey.
All right, so shall we get into the actual episode?
Yeah, listen, I don't think that we need to go through it chronologically. No, I think we can just pick out some like high points or some more meaningful moments. What do you think about that?
I'm with you. The first moment I want to pick out is Daisy says something in this episode, and it's something that I've beat this drum so many times. I've mentioned it on the podcast. You've heard me say this a lot. Whenever I do any sort of public speaking or any sort of like, trainings or anything like that, I talk about this point. She said, I don't think it's me, but I'm not just going to walk away, because what if it is me? And this comes back to a point that I often make. Most people don't want to fail. Some people want to pass. And there's a distinct difference between not wanting to fail and wanting to pass. And I've talked about this in the past. But Daisy demonstrated here a much better mindset in that she wants to pass, right? It's kind of like when you take an exam. So there's a big certification exam that I recently took, and this is an exam that people will frequently. It has a 60% fail rate, right? Sometimes even 65% fail rate, and so a lot of people will just keep rescheduling because they don't want to fail. Whereas me, pass or fail, I'm going to go take the exam, because even if I'm not ready for it, there's a chance I might pass. And this is just a big difference in mindset, right? One is a much healthier mindset. One is a mindset that's going to lead you to more successful paths and avenues in life. And I thought Daisy demonstrated this Now, her actions later maybe hedge that back a little bit, but I really like this comment. It's a philosophy and a view on life and the view on decision making that I think is extremely mature and something that you oftentimes will see with people who tend to be more successful in their lives and in their careers. And so I just loved it. I don't know if you have an opinion on it, but you know.
No, I loved it too, and I noticed that you wrote it down, and it didn't surprise me because it feels very like aligned with you and the way that you view life. I think this also reminded me of when we were at Daisy's hometown and her dad sort of jokingly said, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You lose your hearing. And it's having gone through hardship like that, very little can rattle you because you've already lost so much and seen how resilient you are, that like you have much more trust in yourself to recover. And so the idea of failing doesn't feel as threatening as it might for someone that maybe has not experienced hardship or failure in the past. So seeing Daisy have adopted that mindset was very telling of the inner strength that she has been able to cultivate throughout her own journey.
Yep. Yeah. And I love it. I'm here for it. I think it's going to suit her very well in
whatever she just does next. Okay, so I changed my mind.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily want to go through the episode chronologically, like we need to go through each thing that happens, but can we go through the moments chronologically just so I can contextualize them as we're talking about them?
The way we were bouncing all over the place in this show, like I remember what happened chronologically.
Okay, so
the altar came before meeting the parents, is that correct?
Okay, so let's just go through a quick recap rundown of what happened. Essentially, there's the meeting of Joey's parents. Daisy goes first, Kelsey goes second. Then they have their last chance dates. Same thing, Daisy goes first in a kind of spiritual experience, and Kelsey goes second in a spa experience. We hear a lot of voiceovers from Daisy about her anxiety and slash intuition, which we can definitely talk about. And then we see the iconic moment of Daisy going to Kelsey's door and them having that moment, arriving at the final rose ceremony together, the breakup between Daisy and Joey, the proposal between Joey and Kelsey. Then we flash forward to after the final rose. Daisy and Joey have their closure. Kelsey and Joey are out in public, and that's basically that. Hey, how long did that take me? 30 seconds. Guess what?
We didn't need 3 hours. Yeah.
So there it is for you.
Yeah. All right. So the first big event in the episode is Daisy meeting his parents. So, you know, just a quick synopsis on this, in my opinion. I thought Daisy nailed every aspect of this.
Chris was so smug watching this. He was like, this is why she won.
The sisters were totally in on her. The mother, it was a beautiful moment with the mother. We didn't see anything with the father. You know, even the summary meeting kind of follow-up conversation at the end that they had outside his house was a beautiful moment. At no point in time was there any indication during that meeting that she did not do anything other than crush it. When you contrast Kelsey and Daisy's meeting of the family, Kelsey, she felt so young and so immature, and her answers were so bad. Like, you know, so not bad's the wrong word.
I know as we're talking about Daisy's meeting of the parents, you're really high on what Daisy is doing. And I also know we have to compare it, juxtapose it to Kelsey's meeting. And while we were watching, you were incredibly critical of Kelsey in her immaturity and insecurity. You kept saying, she's so young, she's insufferable.
I never said insufferable.
Oh, that was what... she's exhausting.
Exhausting.
I'm sorry. Exhausting. And
the
so
insecurity is exhausting. Yeah.
What I will say to you is that I feel like your bias for Daisy has been so strong, and your confidence that it was her amplified that it created an inherent negative bias to Kelsey. And so you were much more critical of Kelsey. That also obfuscated your ability to more objectively look at Daisy, because similar to what the criticisms that you were giving Kelsey is what I was seeing in Daisy, that I found her to be quite young, that I found her to be quite exhausting. And so, and I kind of didn't care either way whether or not he would choose Daisy. Like I wasn't invested in an outcome. I had a feeling he was going to choose Kelsey just based on, again, me seeing it a little bit more clearly and obviously that they had a stronger connection. So I just wanted to point that out.
Is it possible that maybe I'm not wrong, but Joey was wrong?
What did I say, y'all, about him being able to say that he's wrong? I'm telling you.
Is it possible?
Someone else is a little exhausting.
Is it possible that maybe Joey just didn't, he just showed his 29-year-old age? I'm just postulating here. I'm not making any judgment calls. I'm just asking the question. That's all I'm doing.
The other thing that I really want to comment on, because again, we're talking about the meeting of the parents, and the thing that seemed quite clear to me was that Daisy seemed, you had said while we were watching, she crushed it. She's crushing this. And I think that she did, but I think she treated it like an interview. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we've seen from Daisy, I think I commented on it last episode, is that she comes across as quite calculated. She's really smart, mm-hmm. and she does know how to play the game. Not Maria level. I mean, maybe.
They're very different tacks. I think they have probably equal competence, mm-hmm. but their direction, the path, mm-hmm. and the tacks that they're taking are very different. Mm-hmm. But I think that they're actually both very competent mm-hmm. in different ways.
And so I think that got in the way of her authenticity and her ability to actually build a connection with Joey. Whereas Kelsey she just like wore herself, her authenticity on her sleeve. Like you could it was oozing out of her, despite her not like forming sentences or words as concisely and confidently as Daisy. Like she was so genuine, mm-hmm. Even when she went to clean something off his face. It was just so natural and so there in a way that it wasn't there with Daisy.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately their connection was undeniable. And ultimately he does end up picking Kelsey. And, I mean, I don't think he was in a situation where he had a bad pick, mm-hmm. right? I mean, these are two lovely girls. They're two beautiful girls. They're two girls that overwhelmingly seem pretty genuine. As I did point out at the very beginning, I do think that Daisy came across as a little more performative this episode than in others. That being said, I do think that Kelsey was, if I'm looking for a wife, I have more red flags with Kelsey than I would with Daisy, just for a lot of reasons. But those are personal preferences, and those preferences clearly aren't shared by Joey, and those are the important things. So my general observation of Kelsey's time with Joey's family is that I think she overwhelmingly lacked the same level of confidence that Daisy had, and I thought that the family's response to her was not bad, but less favorable. The sisters in particular, it just felt to me like they had concerns. And I don't, obviously that didn't weigh that heavily, or maybe it was just the edit that we got. But it, that was what I thought was the most notable thing.
Yeah.
There were some beautiful moments with Daisy, yeah. and it just didn't feel like we got the same buy-in from the family.
Well, that's also how I kind of knew it was Kelsey watching this, because the sisters were, I mean, they
were very positive.
They were very positive. I also felt like the sisters did a great job. Sometimes we see the way that the family relays the information, and it's like, oh, like, did you have to do it that way? I felt like they gave really, like, what they represented was what we saw, mm-hmm. and I felt like that was great. And they were concerned because Kelsey couldn't give a definitive, yes, I'm ready to get married. I actually appreciated what Kelsey was trying to answer. Again, I'm going to use juxtaposed, but like when we think about Jen, her Bachelor announcement, what do you envision at the end of this? Me with a ring on my finger, and then Kelsey saying, I didn't sign up for this to check the box to get married. Like, that's not what it was about for me. And I thought that was such a more genuine answer. And what we hear her say to Joey later is like, I want to get married to you. I didn't like sign up for this because I'm like dying to get married. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, that is what gave the sisters pause, was she couldn't emphatically say, yes, I'm ready to get married. But Joey's receiving of that information was the telling thing, because he was like, okay, that's fine. Like, for Joey, who's been so like, am I going to pick someone and they're not going to pick me? And for him to just be like, it's fine. I don't expect her to.
Well, it's funny because I wrote in my notes, he said, I've got to talk to her about that. And then in the summary conversation after, he doesn't bring it up. And it's not until she brings it up later in sort of a, kind of a half-assed sort of way, doesn't even really address it. And he was just so fine with that. And that definitely was a moment where I was looking at it going like, that is an about face from what we've seen from Joey in the past, which I thought was a little bit curious. Yeah. All right. I think we've exhausted anything worthwhile talking about in the meeting Joey's family. So let's go on to the last chance dates. So anything in particular jumped out at you in either of them? We'll just take them together.
The choice of dates, Kelsey's the winner. Like, I just felt like it was so obvious the whole way through. One gets to sweat and one gets a spa. And that's, no disrespect to like the Mexican culture in what they were doing there, but it just seemed like two very different types of dates where, Daisy was physically uncomfortable and emotionally uncomfortable, and it just wasn't as intimate of a date, whereas the date with Kelsey was quite intimate. Yeah,
from a production perspective, these were not comparable dates, and it kind of is what it is. We've seen this many times in the show. Nothing you can really do about it. Production decides. Right.
And it was this date, per Daisy, that it just really solidified some of the emotion that she was feeling. And I'm trying to be careful with my words here, because one thing that often comes up in therapy is this my intuition speaking, or is this my anxiety? How do I know what to listen to? If it's anxiety speaking, like, anxiety is information, we should pay attention to it, but anxiety is often a liar. Our anxious thoughts are often liars, whereas our intuition is supposed to be more wise, is supposed to be a guide. And you could really see Daisy wrestling between the two. Like, it might not be me, but maybe it is. And anyway, so I feel like that was something that was so paramount throughout this episode was Daisy wrestling with those two things. And when you hear the words that Joey said when they're making a wish for their future, and Joey says, I wish us both happiness, whether we are together or not, it kind of just
sucked the life in the air out of the room.
Yeah. And just confirmed for Daisy that it was not, in fact, anxiety. It was her intuition. She had a sense all along. And it's really hard to distinguish between the two for many of us. And I know you're not someone that deals with a lot of anxiety. I am. And actually we have
a ton of intuition as well.
I do.
You are very high in the anxiety, and you are astronomically high on the intuition.
Yeah. And actually
I'm low on both.
Our Wishing You Well podcast, Catherine and I did a whole episode around is this anxiety or is this my intuition, and how to tell the difference. So we'll be sure to put that in our show notes. But one real big defining factor is actually something that Daisy spoke about. And it's that anxiety is, well, definitely very future focused, of course, and the quality of our thoughts is very rooted in a lot of what if thinking, and it gives us a sense of unease, whereas our intuition is much more grounded, again, gives us a lot more clarity, shouldn't feel that stressful, and she was saying, this shouldn't feel this hard. I shouldn't be feeling anxious at this point. And that was her intuitive self, her most wise-minded self, knowing that this emotion that I'm having is actually giving me the information to confirm what my intuition is saying. And so I thought that watching her go through that experience was so such a helpful display of how to discern, is this into my intuition or my anxiety?
Yeah, that's more insightful than anything I have to offer on this particular segment.
Okay. I just want to take a quick pause to tell you that Revive is hiring. In our Miami and Pittsburgh offices, we have full and part-time W-2 and 1099 clinician positions available, and this includes both postgraduate and associate level licenses, in addition to fully licensed clinicians. In our Connecticut offices, we have full-time, fully licensed W-2 clinician positions available, including clinical supervisor opportunities. If you are interested in working for a company that values community, work-life balance, and your personal and professional growth, then we want to meet you. Find a link to our website in our bio. All right, let's move on to the most iconic moment of, I don't know, the franchise?
When
Perhaps?
she goes to the room, or when they're in the car together?
This
was like a big deal to people, huh?
No
one's ever gone to a room?
This was huge.
Okay.
And the thing that I loved most about it is every season we get some sort of tease that it's, you know, the most unexpected finale ever, the most dramatic finale ever.
And it never is.
And it's always like
a
letdown.
Yeah.
I did not see this coming.
Okay.
And I thought even the way that they edited it, where right before the commercial break, they show Daisy knocking on the door and they show Joey going to answer the door. That was brilliant. And then, then we come back to find that Daisy is knocking on Kelsey's door.
Did you note how fast the knocks were?
They were urgent.
Urgent knocks, and there was like a 3-second gap between the first knock and the second knock. It was like, relax a little. Like the room is not 3 feet long, like, you know. And I thought that was actually really interesting because it spoke probably to a little level of anxiety or apprehension or something. But there were some urgent knocks. Yeah.
Right. And so
I do agree, though. It was surprising when Kelsey opened the door. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, it was so good. And then so they basically, Daisy goes and she's seeking her own clarity here. And she asks, you know, how was your week? Can you tell me about it? And she gets the confirmation that she needs, that it's not her. The way that Kelsey feels, the reassurance that she has, the calmness that she feels is not at all what Daisy is experiencing. And then we go to the limo rides and we see a still of Daisy. We see a still of Kelsey. And then we see that they're in the limo together. I was like stunned. I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? And then Daisy gets out first, which is always, you know, the telltale sign. And then she has this moment at the final rose altar question mark.
It's an altar.
Where she essentially breaks up with herself.
Well, no, I think she very distinctly broke up with him, sort of. Well, no, yeah, well, I mean, it's so interesting. Who breaks up with who in that situation? It's, you're not going to pick me, so I'm leaving, is sort of a you can't fire me, I quit moment, but in a much more empowered way, because it wasn't like there was any real animosity there.
It was so powerful and strong. Like, and the way she did it was also so graceful. It wasn't
That's
like
the key.
She was like,
That's the key.
Like making him feel like shit about it or saying like any of this, you led me along kind of stuff. She really didn't convey any of that. And this was so much more about her choosing herself in that moment. And it's so important that we know when to say when and when it's time to leave or when our time is up and to act on that. And I thought as a woman watching another woman do this and at her age, I was just like in awe of the strength that she had to not only say, I know you're not picking me. I know we're not each other's person. I've been sensing that, and I'm going to leave. And no, I don't need you to walk me out. I think that this is something that I need to do on my own. And I just felt like, damn girl, like I'm so impressed.
Yeah, I mean, there were parts of it I liked. There were parts of it that I was less wild about. I thought, this is where you get into the part where some of it was quite powerful and some of it I thought was really well executed, and then there were parts of it that were a touch too performative for me.
I thought the limo exit got a
the
little
limo
performative.
exit in particular, what I thought was way over the top. You could have been forgiving of everything up to that point, but where it really just got to the point where, okay, now we're into performance territory, was really once you're in the limo. And that sort of caused you to look back on the prior couple of minutes, in a slightly different lens.
Yeah, but we're skipping over the fact that when she walked herself out, she walked to Kelsey.
Well, I mean, I had a couple different feelings about that. I think I need to walk out on my own comment. On the one hand, I don't really... On the one hand, I don't really get a lot of the walkouts. I think they're a little bit strange in some regards. Like, you're with a bunch of other women that you're choosing over this one, but you're going to walk this one out. It's just, there's something, a little bit of a respect thing. Like, you're kind of disrespecting somebody. And I feel like if you're going to disrespect one person, you should be disrespecting the one that you dumped, and more than the ones you're keeping. It's just like a weird situation in these walkout things. And I know, there's sort of an etiquette to it, so you're required. So you kind of get a pass on the fact that it is a touch disrespectful, but it's just weird for me. But I also weighed the fact that she probably was going to go back and have to walk right past Kelsey. I mean, they came in the same van, and how weird and awkward would it be for them to be doing the goodbye directly in front of Kelsey? So walking her out, regardless of whether or not it's an empowering thing or a strong thing, it would have just been weird.
Well, they would have, I'm sure they would have maneuvered a different way out.
Yeah, probably. But it just, to me, the whole thing felt weird. It felt like there were a lot of reasons why it just couldn't happen, from a purely logistics perspective. And so I'm not giving her a ton of credit for that, but I do think that the way it was edited and played came across as quite a powerful and empowering moment. So everybody's making a big deal about them in the limo together, having no real context, being, obviously it didn't happen in the Golden. That's my only frame of reference to this. I guess I understand why it was such a big deal, because it is weird. At the same time, this felt like a season where the women in the house were quite collegiate. They, for the most part, with the exception of, Leia and Sydney, the women all generally were pretty supportive of one another. So I don't know. I guess it didn't, having no frame of reference, it didn't really strike me as odd as I think a lot of other people had it.
Not odd. You can't. For one moment, I wish that you were a Bachelor franchise watcher, because you can't appreciate. I
am. I'm doing a podcast on it.
You can't appreciate what this was for its novelty. But you're glossing over when Daisy walked herself out and she walked directly up to Kelsey. And in that moment, when she was doing her own sort of grieving, was still able to show up and be there and be so happy for Kelsey, tell Kelsey, her friend, something that would have been really meaningful for her to hear, which is that her mom is there with her and is so proud of her. And I just felt like it, again, speaks to a character of Daisy, that she's able to put her own stuff aside and still be happy for her friend. And again, not to just like constantly relate everything Daisy did to, I don't know, what the modern day woman is dealing with. But for two women who are the same age, who are pursuing the same goal or life milestone, aka marriage, it's so easy to be caught up in the comparison game. And Daisy didn't do that there. She was able to, as Kelsey put it on the After the Final Rose couch, was able to see, like, we are both beautiful and special, and like both of those things can be true at the same time. And I don't need to be upset because it's not me, while not letting myself be happy for her.
So in other words, you just enumerated all the reasons why Daisy is the better pick for being a wife, right?
Perhaps it speaks. I had said before that Daisy seems quite young. These moments were moments where her maturity really showed.
Yeah, look, I think both women had their moments of maturity. I think they both had their moments of immaturity. I think that they both are high character individuals from what we've seen. You know, I don't think Joey really had a bad choice here, right? You know, it's weird to think about that when you're choosing a life partner where, I got two good choices. One of them will do. It feels a little bit like my younger brother picking wives, right? just a smidge.
Well, just, you know, goes back to the question of like, is there the one? And, you know, I think we both think that there's not the one. There's probably multiple ones. But I think it's all about place and time in life that matters. And we talked a lot about this on The Golden Bachelor.
Yeah. I think overwhelmingly, you know, we've talked about it a lot. My opinion on love is that love are the actions that I choose to take and you choose to take. They're not feelings. It's not, you know, you don't graduate from like into love. That is not what love is.
Falling in love.
Yeah. And ultimately, if you are committed to somebody, you choose to love them, you choose to engage in the acts of love, and the other person engages in those acts of love as well, then yeah, very clearly you could have a wonderful life with multiple people, because there are multiple people out there in the world that will engage in the acts of love and will commit. Now, that pool, unfortunately, in Western society is getting smaller, and more people are, you know, subscribing to the, you know, love is a feeling, and, you know, I'm a prince or I'm a princess, and, you know, everyone else is here to serve me, unfortunately. But there is still a large contingent of people who do still believe that, you know, love is a demonstration through action that I take, not the way somebody else makes me feel. And I think if you're going to be successful in finding a partner and in being in a long-term relationship, those are the types of qualities and characters of a person you're looking for. You know?
Speaking of love, I don't want to overshadow the real main event, which was the proposal.
I thought the main event was that Max finally was willing to sit quietly during this entire podcast. He made one move so far.
Well, let's see how much further he can go. But so far, he's getting my rose.
Okay, there we go. Only took 11 episodes for him to sit quietly through an episode.
He's tired too. So the engagement proposal.
Yep.
I'm very happy for them. Like I agree.
They seem really happy and excited.
They do. They seem genuinely in love. It feels genuine as it can, and so I want to make sure that we don't just breeze by that. But they did have a beautiful proposal, and
I thought it was really interesting that he let Daisy get a word in, and he did not let Kelsey get a word in.
That also was not very typical. Usually, the contestant will, you know, share something.
They give a little vow. It felt very vow-like.
Yeah. But he just went right in.
Just plowed right on in. Yeah. I mean, he seemed really excited. So it wouldn't shock me if you watched that back and be like, huh, I didn't let you talk, huh? Like, it wouldn't shock me if he just was so excited.
Yeah.
And there was so many emotions flying through at that moment that, you know, he didn't even recognize it for what it was.
Yeah. All right, let's get to after the final rose.
We all know these are my least favorite things. You know, but I thought that in some ways it just felt like it was really moving.
Yeah.
So I didn't, and they got people in and out of those seats so quickly that it was a little less painful than some of the others. But we obviously open up with Daisy coming.
She looks stunning.
Stunning. I mean, she's a beautiful young lady. The dress was great. You know, the whole thing worked. You know, she knows how to do these interviews. She just does. She's natural. She's well prepped at them. She hit all the right marks. Can't really give any major criticism. It was just a well executed interview. I think where the criticism comes down is when they bring Joey out and they have a very nice, and I don't know how these normally go if there's usually more animosity. I know with Gary and Leslie there was some real tension in the room. These were two people that were both, you know, playing it cool, above board. But the criticism is really that this is where Joey was super robotic. And I've made that criticism a lot.
Yeah, so you've used that word in the past, and it's never, ever resonated with me. It's still like quite not right, but he was stiff. Yeah. And it almost felt like, wait, we've watched this guy for 11 episodes. I've seen him on countless interviews on social media. Like, we've got a really good feel for what his personality is. And for some reason, like it just wasn't coming through. And I don't know if it's just like trying to be like, it felt like he was really contained, like he really wanted to keep his hands to himself, was very sensitive about, you know, the probability that his fiance was watching and her family was watching. It just felt like he just really wanted to keep it kind of buttoned up and together and not say too much or be too he was just so matter of fact in a way that we just again haven't seen him before. Not rude, not mean, not, I mean, I said it sounded very
genuine.
professional.
Yeah, exactly. I've been critical of this in the past, not just on this show, but I think it's really, really weird when the lead sits down and like puts his hand, like Gary did it to Leslie, and it's like, you guys are broken up. You are now engaged. Get your hands off other women. It's just, I find it so weird, and not in like a prudish sort of way. It's just like I just
it's a boundary.
It's a weird. I just find it a weird thing. Like, you know, don't touch people. like you know, if you're not dating them, don't touch them. I just find the whole thing weird. And the fact that he was quite boundaried. I thought that was quite respectful of his fiance, and I thought that was a good thing. It was really just more, you know, his responses to everything were very, very careful, very measured, you know, and it felt like, in some ways, you know, it felt like, okay, it's been months. I've made it through this entire episode or this entire season. I've made no major mistakes. Just I'm at the 1 yard line.
Don't fuck it up now.
Don't fuck it up now. And also, I think it's relevant. You know, we see it in one contiguous session, but he's been off for months, right? Presumably
months, like I think since November.
He's been doing interviews and stuff like that, but there's a big difference doing interviews with, you know, a bunch of friendly podcasts and a bunch of friendly, you know, interviewers, as opposed to being on live TV, you know, with the girls in front of you. And so he's probably feeling a little rusty. He also doesn't know exactly what he's walking into. And so I could see how in that situation, you know, we're like, oh, this was just a few hours ago, 10 minutes ago, you were at the altar with this person. But no, it's been like 5 months or whatever it's been. So I could see that playing a big factor, you know. But I think it probably was more a function of, I'm at the 1 yard line. Let's just drive this in for the touchdown and don't fumble on.
Yeah. I mean, it was all fine. And actually,
that's a football reference, by the way.
I know football. And while we're talking about Daisy, let's just fast forward a little bit to when they make the Daisy isn't the Bachelorette announcement. I feel like they really had to do that, because after her performance on this episode, it felt like she's the Bachelorette. But I really appreciated her basically saying, like, I'm healthy and I'm happy and I haven't had that in a while, and I essentially just want to focus on that. I thought that was, I feel like that if we didn't get that, we would have been asking questions. So I feel like they knew their audience there.
Once we got through the Kelsey Joey conversation, at that point, it had been 2.5 hours. My patience was low. I was ready to start filming. And so I kind of at that point was at a point where I was like, let's just end this. I don't need to hear more. I'm not interested.
No, I know.
And then when they brought Kelsey and her back, I understand it was unprecedented. It was a moment. I'm sure they wanted to memorialize that in a conversation. But it did, for me, it was getting a little long at that point.
Yeah.
I could have done without it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's interesting because I love that they did that and they had that moment. I thought like the chat with Daisy originally was pretty quick. It was long at that point. We do get to see Kelsey and Joey kind of like out in their relationship, which was sweet, and hear that they are, you know, doing a stopover in New Orleans and then, you know, coming up to New York. So when Kelsey and Joey are on the couch together, they can't not ask her about her mom. And because, as we've been talking about since Kelsey's hometown, her mom has been a presence, her late mother. And Kelsey said a quote that I thought was really fitting, that I wanted to talk about. She had said something about how while, you know, she of course is, you know, thinking about her mom and she feels her presence very much, that grief is love's souvenir, and that quote has been she's been holding on to that quote. And I just wanted to share the full quote. So the quote is actually a passage from a book by Glennon Doyle called Love Warrior. And the full quote is, "Grief is love's souvenir. It is our proof that we once loved. Grief is the receipt we wave in the air that says to the world, look, love was once mine. I love well. Here's my proof that I paid the price." It's a powerful quote. And I think, the really beautiful thing about humans is that despite the fact that we know that everyone, including ourselves, is going to die, and that we're going to be, dealing with our own sense of loss and grief and bereavement, that we choose to love anyway. And that I feel is just, a very beautiful part of who we are and what we do as humans. But the amount that we grieve is in proportion to the amount that we love. And that does give people a sense of comfort in dealing with pain and sadness.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with that quote, but there is a, kind of in the philosophical circles with which I read and follow, there is sort of this mindset of, life is a series of, painful events, right? And love is the respite from the pain of life. There's no way to go through life without going through tremendous pain over and over and over again. And what makes it bearable is in fact love, which is a very similar sentiment to the passage that you read. And yeah, I think in general, I think that is the correct way to look at, kind of life in general, and where love fits into it, and why love is so important. And, why I do think, I'm a huge proponent of marriage. I'm a huge proponent of love. And it's one of the big reasons why I think more people need to give up on this more modern idea of like, I don't need to be with somebody. I'll just, have my career and, have my cat and just, have my own apartment. And, that is not how you have a happy life. Humans are inherently social creatures, and the best aspects of the social society is the aspect of love. Okay. Before we wrap up this season, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get into Rose and Thorns? Any last comments? Any last feelings?
No, this was a great season, and it ended on such a high note.
So you're pumped and ready for Jen's season?
I'm ready for a little bit of a break, honestly, from this recording schedule. But I'm very excited for Jen's season whenever it may come. Just let it not come immediately.
So we are getting back-to-back Bachelorettes. We're getting Bachelorette, then followed immediately by Golden Bachelor.
I think that's the schedule.
Interesting. Okay. Well, hey, we will be here when Jen's season picks up in a few months. Let's wrap it up. Let's move into Rose and Thorn.
You asked about my Rose this week.
Love it. My Thorn this week.
I hated to see that.
So my Thorn for the episode, it's kind of a, split between two. For one, we all know, I just think 3 hours is too long. We didn't need it. The last half an hour I thought was completely fluff, unnecessary. And I definitely thought that we could have easily gotten this down to 2 hours, and that third hour was just unnecessary. But I adore Jen. I do. But I just thought her introduction as a Bachelorette, it came across as trying too hard, and she was trying to be funny and it wasn't landing. And I just thought it was such a botched introduction, and I feel bad for her because she seems like such a fun, cool, cute girl. And I just, young woman, but I wish it had gone better. It wasn't a great introduction in my mind.
Yeah, I don't disagree on either count. It's interesting because I thought that the episode itself, like, I wouldn't even know where to trim the fat on this episode. That's the thing. Like, this actually was an episode that I thought, like, we needed the 3 hours. Like, what would we have cut? I felt like things were moving quickly. So it was long, but I didn't feel like it was, finales of the past where it's like, oh my gosh, already. Like the Women Tell All, where I was like, okay, that was too much. But I agree also about Jen.
Yeah. Your Thorn.
My Thorn is very petty.
Okay.
because mostly I have a lot of roses to give out.
Okay.
My thorn is regarding what Joey wore to after the final rose. Every episode this season, he has had such a great suit, really interesting suit color, pattern, or shirt or something. And he was just so sort of like neutral on his last foray that I was just like, dude, like the whole season you've brought it in the suit game. What's up with that?
I mean, I've been very critical of some times where he has just not been putting in the level of effort that I think is commensurate with the effort that's been put in by the women.
Well, that's typical. I mean, well, not now, but
Oh, you were going to bash me. Meanwhile, we're wearing the same freaking thing.
But anyway, so that's how high I'm thinking of this episode. That's my thorn.
And you said you got a lot of roses, so start whipping them out.
Okay, well, Max will get one of my roses. Look how good he's being.
Can I just point out, we have had to lock Max in the basement because he's been a terror.
Don't say it like that. They're going to think we're animals ourselves.
I only left him down there one time overnight on accident. Yeah, no, Max has been really good. It took 11 episodes for him to sit quietly. You know, we've had to extirpate him from the recording area many times, but he was good this episode.
Yes. So Max gets a rose. I thought, honestly, Joey gets a rose 11 out of 11 episodes.
Where he kept it together.
He won. He did it. He was great. Truly, from top to bottom, minus the suit at the end, was great. So he gets a rose. I thought Jesse did a great job in the after the final rose interviews, concise, got right to it. And I want to give Jesse the rose for not overselling and under-delivering on the ending. This was an ending to be remembered. I did not see it coming, was completely surprised, jaw dropped, speechless in it. And the way that Daisy handled herself, I already said all of this. I mean, just high praise all around.
Yeah, okay. So I was actually going in a similar vein with Jesse. I really thought he did an excellent job with the interviews. I don't like these style episodes, and oftentimes the interviewer, the person who's facilitating the event, it can go really sideways really quickly. And I actually really like this one. I agree, super concise, to the point, in and out, get him in the chair, get him out of the chair, and keep it moving. So I thought that was really the high point of the episode. It was probably the part of the episode that I was most concerned about having to just get through,
muscle through,
and he made it quite bearable. Actually, Jesse,
he's really good at this.
He's really good at this. It's a not an easy skill. And he doesn't come from a background where you would expect that he would be good at this, and yet he really performs.
Yeah.
Okay, since it's a season finale, let's just do a real quick season rose and thorn.
Okay, I mean, this is a cop-out answer. My season rose goes to Joey.
Okay, yeah, saw that coming.
Again, like, he was funny, he was authentic, he was serious when he needed to be. He didn't get bought into the bullshit. I thought he was such a good, I wasn't sure how he was going to be. We didn't really get to see a lot in terms of personality on Charity season. Meeting Joey was amazing. I wasn't sure he'd be able to hold the position of the lead. He did it. I mean, for a Bachelor to walk away this loved, I don't think has ever happened. And so he just seems like a genuinely good person. It was a fantastic season. Truly one of my favorite seasons.
Interesting, yeah. I'm in a very similar vein. I'm going to give the season rose to the casting of the female cast. I thought that they did a really good job picking a lot of very interesting individuals and kind of characters that played really well on screen. There was just enough drama to keep it interesting at times, but it wasn't overbearing drama.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And maybe that's for the producers as well. Like, it felt like the right amount. It didn't feel exhausting. They kept it moving. And I thought it was a really good season.
That does, however, dovetail nicely into my thorn. My thorn for the season is going to be, it was a little too predictable. I felt like within very and the points in our Survivor game tell you all you needed to know. There were a lot of really high points, and I think it just because it was pretty obvious pretty early on who Joey was smitten with and who were going to go far, so I think that there was an aspect of it that could have been more suspenseful that just wasn't there. And I don't know, you would point out, like, Chris, this is not a thriller. And I get that. I take that point. You're here for the drama. You're not necessarily here for the thriller part of it or the suspense. But I think a little more suspense I could have got on board with.
Okay. I have two relatively small thorns. One is, I like that they tried to go in a different direction with giving Leia the card. I just wish that it wouldn't have gone out of play that quickly. That was such a good idea to make this season a little less predictable and a little bit more interesting. And so I hope that they revisit that, but find a way to do something different, like, so that, like, it doesn't just get discarded in the fire.
It felt a little too arbitrary, but I did like the sort of Hell's Kitchen-ness of it.
Yeah. And so I just think, like, that kind of flopped, and it was such a good idea. My other thorn, while this is no shade at all against Canada, I'm so happy that we got to see it. It didn't just feel like they traveled a lot, and typically, like, that's a big draw of the show, is seeing where they go. And so I felt like we were missing, like, one additional stop, and so it wasn't like that they went to Canada. That's not what I'm saying. It was just like
hung out in Canada too
for
long.
for a long time. And so I would have liked to see just a different part of the world. That's all.
All right. No, great. All right. Successful season?
I think so.
All right. Let's get out of here.
Okay. We're going to Mexico.
We're going to Mexico. We get on a plane in 3 hours.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being with us this season. We will see you in a couple weeks for Jen's season of The Bachelorette. But in between now and then, we're going to be back with some other content. So stay tuned for that. Also, if you are a winner of our Survivor pool, Chris will, share more about that so that you know who you are. But if you are a winner, don't forget to email us at reactivitytv@revivecfw.com to let us know who you are so we can send you your prize. You can also email us there to give us show suggestions for any comments, feedback, anything that you want to share that you haven't already shared with us on our page. You can follow along with us on Instagram at reactivitytv. You can follow me at Amy Albero LCSW. And don't forget to check out our other podcast, Wishing You Well, which is on YouTube and also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I will be sure to link that episode I referenced in the show notes. But thank you all for such a great season. You also get our final rose. You were awesome, and I can't wait to watch Jen's season with you in a few weeks. Take care. We'll see you soon.
And stay tuned very quickly for the update on the Survivor game. Okay, so we have come to the conclusion of the Survivor game, and we're ready to declare our victors. We have, from the Revive staff, Daniela scoring 33 points. We have 2 people who scored 37 points, which I believe were perfect scores. And those were Math Pi Hanan at 37 and I'm Scannon at 37. We had said that anybody who scores higher than all of the Revive staff, we were going to put them into a pool, and the top 3 would also win a prize. Well, guess what? We only had 3, so you all win a prize too. The 3 people who scored higher than Daniela were Eileen Loudon, 6077 with 36 points, Tiffany Rose, 98 with 34 points, and Leslie A, 4139 with 34 points. So here's the deal. We don't know who you are outside of a handle on YouTube. So you need to email reactivitytv@revivecfw.com. That email address will be in the show notes. And let us know who you are so that we can make sure that you get a prize. And
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah, really excited. We had a really decent turnout. We'll see if we do this again in the future. Maybe make some changes, some modifications, maybe spice it up a little bit in the future. But I think it was fun. I think it was additive. I know the Revive staff, really, we got a lot of buy-in from some people who had never watched a show before. And it was pretty exciting. Just nice.
Danielle has never watched, and she won.
Yeah, and we got really close to having a 3-way tie between you, Emma, and Daniela. And Emma, I believe, is also a first-time watcher. Yeah. So brought in a lot of people. So it was exciting. So, yeah. So congratulations to the winners. Make sure to email us. The email address, again, reactivity at revivecfw.com.
Reactivity TV.
I'm sorry. Reactivity TV at revivecfw.com. Email us, and that will also be listed in the show notes.